Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to share some of my experiences of the healing power of love. Really, we are becoming a yoga nation. It's 1 out of every 5 Americans doing yoga now. And it's 1 out of 3 considering doing it within a year because they know it's good for them. And as Americans, we're so creative and inventive. There's now aerial yoga and acrobatic yoga. And in Richmond, you can take a yoga aboard a surfboard that's wiggling, surfboard yoga. There's cat yoga, dog yoga, doga, goat yoga, where the goats come and do downward goat on top of your back. There's horse yoga. You can look it up on YouTube, Horse Subaru Yoga. It's an ad for Subaru, the car, where they take the car out into the country and then they do yoga bareback on the backs of horses. So cute, so laughable. There's naked yoga, co-ed, New York, Washington, San Francisco. Of course, in the beginning, all yoga was naked. I like to do hatha naked, but with the walls in the way, not in a company, but some people don't mind the company. So we become aware of the power of yoga. And really, I like to wear this love hat a lot because it reminds me that the aim of our yoga practice is love. So I think we ought to start with our children. And here's one of my favorite books now, which I'm brought for show and tell. It's called I Am Yoga. It's got such beautiful illustrations. And it's for children, but I bought it for myself because it's so wonderful. And there are 2 follow-up books, I Am Peace and I Am Human, about accepting diversity and embracing our differences. But I showed it to my niece, who's 2.5, and I showed her this picture, which is someone with all the light coming out of their body. And she said, "Oh, I can do yoga." She lay down on the floor and experienced the light, which is my first experience of the power of yoga, was deep relaxation. I was a stressed out medical student. I went to my first class. I thought I'd have to tie myself in knots. It was such an amazing class, but particularly deep relaxation. When I went into deep relaxation, it was Swami Karunananda teaching in the 3rd floor of the San Francisco IYI in 1970, the same place where others have had the same experience. And Richard Miller is now teaching deep relaxation to the military based on had the same experience, was the same teacher, the same place, same year. When I went through the class and I went through deep relaxation and I came to where you go to between your eyes and you let go, I said, wow, this is a kind of medicine. And I've been studying it ever since, the power it has to get us into that connection with who we really are. And I have a friend, she had a near-death experience. She had cerebral malaria, and she was in a coma for a week. And when she came back into her body, she said it was like putting on 2 tight pantyhose, because who we are is a radiant being of light. And we're driving around in this mini RV, the recreation vehicle of the body. And it's kind of who we are is full of love. It's made out of love. And a lot of our culture seeks love from outside, but that's a setup for an upset in case we don't get it. But the wisdom is that we're made out of love. So I'm going to talk about that. But next show and tell is Dr. Dean Ornish's new book. It's called Undo It. It's based on the principle of, someone asked Swami Satchidananda, "Are you a Hindu?" He said, "No, I'm an undo." I want to undo all the stresses and strains and divisions and pain that's been created by our so much judgmental and separation, and I'm going to undo all that and get us in touch with the basics of life. So it's 4 basic principles, which are move more. We've become way too sedentary as a culture. We need to move. We're fluid. We're little walking aquariums. The body's a little aquarium for the cells. That's why we can walk on land. Our blood is salty, our lymph is salty. We're just a little walking aquarium for ourselves. But it needs to flow. If you've ever had an aquarium, they don't work very well if you don't get them to flow. So let's all take a deep breath. The simplest, most portable, besides Smileasana, is deep breathing. And we can always do deep breathing. It's the most portable of all our yoga tools. And it immediately relaxes us. Why? Because there are stretch receptors in the lungs that when we pull on them, fire a signal to the brain that then fires a signal and activates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our relaxation response. Let's all do it again. This is a pranayama class disguised as satsang. But it happens immediately. It's not that we're getting in more oxygen and getting rid of more carbon dioxide, but what we're doing is activating a different sympathetic, parasympathetic balance. Our sympathetic is our fight or flight. Our parasympathetic is our relaxation. We have a central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. We have another set of nerves alongside the spinal column. In the neck and the low back are the parasympathetics, which relax us, the vagus nerve, the biggest relaxation nerve, part of that system. And then the sympathetics, which go right to the adrenals when we're under stress. So we need to move more to get our fluids to move. And then the second is eat well, and we need to eat smart. We need to put the right fuel in our fish tank, our cell tank. And we need to be aware of substitutes that we can make for the foods that aren't so good, that are so available. Then love more. That's the next principle, which I'm going to focus on tonight. And then finally, stress less. Because when we love more, we stress less. So that's his new book. I highly recommend it. Dr. Deepak Chopra wrote as one of he had many people from all over walks of life give little clips about how much they love Dean Ornish. And his program, he said, Dean Ornish is my mentor. And he is the mentor around the world. At Davos, at the big economic forum, they only give people 1 hour to speak. They gave him 3 hours because they realize his work it's the only diet and lifestyle program that's ever been studied scientifically for 35 years. And so if you hear all these headlines about paleo and keto and all these things that come along, they don't have the research. He has the research. It's always number one on every year there's a magazine that's produced from Consumer Reports about what's the best diet to reverse heart disease, and it's always Dr. Ornish's. And now shown to reverse cancer, the tumors shrink down, shown to reverse diabetes, shown to reverse arthritis, many other problems. So it's really worth it. But I want to start again with 2 quotes which apply to our political landscape and our earth environmental challenges, and especially in celebration of 70 years of Mahatma Gandhi and the Salt March, how much one person can do to make a difference in the world. He said, I trust that in the end, truth and justice will win out, ... because they always do. And I love that quote, because in the end, we'll figure it out. And I like to pair that quote with a quote from Winston Churchill, who didn't do all things right, but did this quote I love, which he said, I trust America to do the right thing, ... after having exhausted all other options. So we're in the midst of that phase. And so I'm going to address that a little bit. So the greatest of these is love. That's the greatest of move more, eat smart, stress less, and love more. The greatest is love. But if you were to go into any hospital and walk up and down the aisles and try to figure out why people are sick, it'd be one of 5 immediate causes. Number 1 is diet. It's overtaken cigarettes as the worst cause of illness in our culture. So we really need to pay attention. 70% of Americans overweight, high blood pressure, all the things that go along with it, especially weight that carries around the middle, that's associated with diabetes particularly, and heart disease and cancer and depression. And in medicine, you learn the bigger the waist, the smaller the brain, because the brain shrinks down when there's so much inflammation. So we have to make changes. And the Ornish program works. It really does work. Within 3 weeks, the body starts to fix itself. It's so exciting. Number 2 is cigarettes. And when I was smoking, which I learned how to do in medical school before I learned yoga, people would come up to me and say, "You should quit smoking." And I'd smoke more because we don't like to be told what to do as humans. But I remember at a party, one person came up to me. They put their hand on my arm and they said, "What's a great person like you doing smoking?" So the message was that I was valuable. And I think that's the message we need to give ourselves and our children. You can do it, and it's worth it, and you're valuable. And even though it's an effort to love, and it's hard work, it's worth it because you feel better and everybody else feels better. So when we're getting a baby to walk, when we're teaching it to walk, we don't say to it, "That's bad walking." They're wobbling all over the place. They're falling down. What do we say to it? "That's great. You can do it. That's great." So that's the voice we need in our head. Shame and guilt don't work. We'll invite Ben and Jerry over when we're under stress. If we feel stressed, we'll forget all the facts. It's not facts that move us. It's emotions. And so the message is that love is valuable. We're valuable. We're made out of it. And that's the message we need to give our children and ourselves. So cigarettes, still 1 in 5 Americans smokes. And what do they get most days if they're going out and smoking? They get all these angry, annoyed faces looking at them instead of, "You can do it, you can do it," and sending them love and prayer and light. Alcohol's number 3. It's number 1 for hospital admissions. It's number 1 for murders, number 1 for gunshot wounds, number 1 for accidents, still while texting, while driving, catching up. How many of you have texted while driving? About half. We need to stop because our children are doing it. We need to stop. So, but alcohol still a huge cause of problems. Most accidents, in general accidents per se, most boating accidents alcohol related, most horseback riding accidents alcohol related, and most snake bites alcohol related. And it wasn't the snake drinking the alcohol. Okay, so people are in pain. They want to fix their pain, but should we have 23 miserable hours a day and 1 happy hour a day caused by poisoning ourselves? Alcohol is a poison. Even 1 beer or 1 glass of wine, when you take a biopsy of your liver, you'll see death to liver cells. The liver's trying to keep it out of the bloodstream. It kills the liver cells, a certain number of them. The liver's enormously rejuvenative. You can cut 2/3 of the liver away, and the whole thing will regrow in 6 weeks. It's amazing. It's the only organ can do that. But why make it do that on a cellular level? It kills brain cells, especially in the left prefrontal cortex, which is good decision making, which is why you see all these people dancing on tables and saying horrible things and getting into fights, and it happens all the time. And it hurts the heart. It kills the heart muscle. It does not prevent heart disease. That's a myth that got repeated and repeated by the alcohol industry. But the British, who have to pay for the health care for their country, have over and over published studies that showed that not even 1 drink a day is safe. Just recently, the headline from Britain, not even 1 drink a day is safe. Increases breast cancer in women, increases heart disease in both men and women. Increases heart disease. So we need to get that word out as opposed to the word. There's a lot of fake news in science and medicine. We need to figure it out, sort it out. You can't really trust Dr. Internet. Dr. Google is not always right. But anyway, here's where yoga comes in. Let's all take a deep breath. We can learn how to relax without poison. So then, and other drugs too, OxyContin, 40,000 deaths last year. It ought to be the first news story every night. 40,000 people die. That's 10 times as many as in the Twin Towers. And so what can we do? We have to start dealing with the pain that leads people to want to fix it by a pill that ends up with Heath Ledger, many Prince, many of these people who died from these overdoses of prescription pills. Okay, so then a lack of exercise. So we become bed potatoes, not just couch potatoes. So diet, cigarettes, alcohol and drugs, lack of exercise, and then stress. And about 80% is stress related. Because once again, we can know all the things that stress does to us, and still, if we're feeling the stress, we'll make unhealthy lifestyle choices. We can know all the healthy lifestyle choices when we're under stress. We'll make them. So what happens when the body's under stress? Our pupils dilate. Why? Body wants to see the enemy better. So pupils dilate. So if you're out on a date and somebody's pupils are dilated, you're sitting across from, they're very interested in you. Or they're on drugs. one or the other. So what else does the body do? When we're under stress, it draws up the shoulders. We tighten the shoulders. Why? Because we want to appear big to the enemy. So reach around back behind you, do a little experiment. Grab hold of your neck and shoulder and ask yourself, is it any tighter than when you were a kid? That's stress buildup. And that's what yoga and deep relaxation and doing our yoga practices every day can get rid of that stress buildup. Our palms become sweaty, and we become sweaty under the arms. Why? The body's trying to help us so we can slip away from our enemies. That's what it's about. So rather than covering it up with antiperspirants, which aren't healthy, they make us hold in things that the body wants to get rid of, reduce the stress by our daily yoga practice and relaxation. Stomach butterflies when we're under stress. And many actors and actresses. Henry Fonda used to throw up before he went on stage every time he went on a play, to be in a play, because of nervousness. The body, why? It's trying to get rid of that stuff out of the digestive tract so that it can run. We get diarrhea before an exam. Why? The body wants to be light in order to run, so we get the runs. Bulimia is very addictive. Why? Because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system when we throw up. You ever thrown up and feel really great afterwards? That's parasympathetic. Had a great bowel movement? Oh, there's nothing like a great bowel movement. We feel really good. That's parasympathetic activation. Well, once again, we can take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath and go into that relaxed state and avoid the side effects of bulimia, bad teeth, poor nutrition. And Princess Diana, she threw up all the time when she was first married because her husband had made fun of her weight. And again, putting power in somebody else's hands about how we feel about ourselves. So rather than blame the other person, we can take the power back and say, okay, I can learn to relax. And she did in other ways than bulimia. So then the problem with stress is it raises blood pressure, and then the blood vessels get stiff, and it can lead to strokes, it can lead to aneurysms, it can lead to high blood pressure, it can lead to even high cholesterol, stress related. Before and after a race car drive 2-hour race, 50 points bump up in the cholesterol afterwards, just from the stress. So 50% of heart attacks, a major stressor within 48 hours of the heart attack. My father had a heart attack during a basketball game. It was Kentucky versus North Carolina. He was watching on TV. He was having crushing chest pain, turned pale, nausea, short of breath, numb on the left-hand side, which is all classic heart attack signs. But he wouldn't let my mom take him to the hospital till the game was over. He's from Kentucky, they were losing. I asked him, do you ever get angry during basketball games? He said, oh no, just a little, a little annoyed. And my mother was there, said, oh yes he does. He's always yelling at the other team for playing dirty, yelling at the coaches, and that's it. The number one risk factor in terms of emotions for disease is loneliness and social isolation. Number 2 is anger. Number 3 is depression. Number 4 is anxiety. So let's talk about those for a minute and what yoga can do. Loneliness is the number 1 factor. And they now have a minister of loneliness in England. That's a sign. Yeah, it's a sign to address. 40% of people say they feel lonely because we feel lonely in our little aquarium walking around. But yoga teaches us that instead of feeling lonely, we can feel all onely. We can feel connected to the oneness that we come from. We all come from the same source. That's what the yantra represents. It represents the Big Bang. In the middle is the source. Everything was one, one, one. God was one, one, one. I think I'll appear as many. And that's the Big Bang. And so I think I'll manifest as many, but still at the heart of things be connected to the source. That's why in the Wizard of Oz, at the end it says, "You were home all along, Dorothy." Why? Because Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, was a student of yoga. And the 4 different aspects, the heart, the brain, and so forth, were the different paths of yoga. So it was really showing us that we are home all along. And we are in Kansas. We're still in Kansas. And it's heaven on earth if we have the right perspective, which is that yantra. We can all be sorcerers, in touch with our source. Why should Harry Potter have all the fun? We can be sorcerers by knowing our source that is love, that is eternal love. So Swami Satchidananda gave a talk at the Cancer Center in Charlottesville. He went up to the blackboard. He wrote the word illness, and then below it the word wellness. He circled the I in illness and the we in wellness, and he said, "There's my talk. I can sit down now." So when we think we're separate is when we get into trouble. We do all the stressful things, but we're very social creatures. And when we don't feel connected, when we don't feel loved, we don't feel the love of who we are, then we do all kind of bizarre things to fill that hole of pain. But they don't work. They have side effects. Food has side effects. If you're using it to comfort food has side effects. And so how can we do it differently? Well, one of the first things Swami Satchidananda said was, someone asked him, "What's the biggest mistake your students make?" He said, "Thinking they can do it by themselves." So that's what we have. We have body, things for the body from yoga. We have things for the mind. And we have things for the connection to spirit. And then nature, our connection to nature is important. And finally, our connection to community. We need to connect to our community. But I was traveling on a bus in Egypt with Swamiji. It was just myself and he one time. And I said, "I have these 2 questions I want to ask you. Can I ask you?" He said, "Okay." I said, "First of all, when I'm with certain people, I feel really like so happy and I want to be with them. And I just felt how peaceful. I always felt when I was with him, my mind stopped itching to be somewhere else. I was happy to be there in the now." And I said, "But then with other people, I don't." He was quiet for a minute. He said, "Don't let your mind do that. When you see rightly, you will see God coming through everyone." And I looked up in this bus, and all of a sudden, everyone looked beautiful. I see through God's eyes. You see through the individual recreation vehicle of the body, and you look in the eyes, and it's just you looking back at you. It's just God looking back at God. It's all the source. Oh, yeah. That's it. Oh, it's so simple. It's so simple. God is omnipresent. God is omnipresent. Oh, phew. Phew. Oh, I was home all along. I was scared, but I don't have to be. I grew up never feeling that I was good enough. Never, ever feeling I was good enough. We're good enough because love is enough. Love is consciousness. If I'm really conscious of this beautiful glass of water, I'm loving it. If I'm really loving it, I'll be really conscious. So consciousness is love. What can you never be without? Your consciousness. Someone can bonk you on the head when you wake up. What are you? Conscious. We used to think in America, toys are us. We can't think that way anymore. They shut down, although somebody's trying to bring them back. We used to think things outside, things are us. No, but consciousness are us because it's you. You are consciousness. And guess what? Consciousness is omnipresent. Thank goodness. Okay, so that's I illness. So thinking you can do it alone. And Swamiji used to say, come to God by ones or come to God by twos, but come to God. So the second question I asked him in the bus, where everybody looked beautiful because there were tall people, wide people, different nationalities, Americans, Egyptians, they all looked beautiful. And that's, I think, the way we can see each other. We can do it. So I said, being Libra, I always love to share things. I was looking to share. And so whenever I see a beautiful sunset, I want to say, "Oh, isn't that beautiful, darling?" It's like, I told him that. And he said, Don't let your mind do that. He said, when you see something, when you're alone, also feel connected to everything in the universe at the same time. So the next time I was at the Overlook, I said, okay, it was a beautiful sunset. I was there by myself. I said, okay, I'm just going to hug the sunset. And I tell you, this truthfully happened. I hugged the sunset, and the sunset hugged me back. I practically fell over. So that's how omnipresent God is. And I was sitting with a patient, which in good weather, I like to see patients outdoors. And at the end of the session, she said, oh, I wish I could have known Gurudev while he was in the body. I said, you know, he said it'd be easier once he left the body for people to communicate with me. And it was a gray day. And I said, that sentence, it'd be easier for people to communicate with me. I put the sentence at the end, period at the end, and the sun burst out from the clouds. And I thought, whoa, our mouths dropped open. It's like, and then I was sitting in the satsang hall here once, and I was looking over this picture, and the person I was sitting next to said, you know, that's such a beautiful picture. And I said, you know, it's alive. And the light blinked on the top, and it never blinked for the rest of satsang. But once again, we can see that if God is omnipresent, also omnipresent in things. I was thinking about that. I was reading a book on health, and it said, things have feelings. And I said, well, okay, they're made out of the same consciousness, just at different levels. Everything's made out of consciousness, if you see from that level of physics. So I went out to my car, and I was working in Charlottesville and driving back and forth and in Richmond. I said, I just want to thank you for all your service. And I swear the grill lifted up a little bit. That car was so good to me. Really, we live in a much more alive, we live in Hogwarts. We live in a much more alive universe, I think, than we realize. So the number one cause of illness is social isolation. So we need to work on our social connections, both internally and externally. Then number two is anger. And someone gave a great definition of anger. It's the most common emotion that Americans feel, especially when they don't get love from outside. And it's the cause of so much brutality and division between religions and so forth. They said anger is when we take poison hoping it'll hurt someone else. Because it does. It raises blood pressure, it hurts our heart, it hurts us when we get angry. Even at number one day of heart attacks, Christmas Day. Overeating and getting angry at your family. Number two day for heart attacks, New Year's Day. Overeating, getting angry because you didn't get the love you wanted on New Year's Eve. And you drowned your sorrows in alcohol. Number three day after New Year's. Number 4 day, Super Bowl Sunday. People eating all kinds of stuff and then getting angry because they don't get the love that you want or the team to win. Yes, okay. Well, I have lots more to say, but you have to give me some sign when I'm running out of time here. But I just want to say that here's what the Dalai Lama says about anger. Smile and walk away. Smile and walk away. Because confronting somebody, Swamiji showed this one day. He said, when two people are angry, both have to be stiff like this to make noise. If one is flexible, no noise. But everybody says, no, you be the one to flex. No, you be the one to flex. I see this with my sister and her son. This happens all the time. It's like, no, you have to change. No, you have to change. So let's be the person who is the love. Let's be the person who is flexible. Let's bring that to our lives. And we can do it because it keeps us safe to do that. Another thing we can do when you get angry is to be curious and say, oh, I wonder what kind of childhood that person had. Because it's only hurt people that hurt others. There's a great French proverb. It goes, to know all is to forgive all. And Longfellow said, if you could know the secret history of your enemy, all your anger would cease. So you try to, again, point out the compassion toward this life or last life or whatever has brought them to this position. So So I was at the beach, and one more relationship disaster. I was so mad. I used to call Gurudev on the phone when these things. I was really looking for a long time for love from outside, and I called him. I was sobbing on the phone, and he said, "Are you going to keep crying?" I said, "I think so." He said, "Good. It's a kind of pranayama. It gets up the mucus." So I was so angry, too, that could feel the steam coming out of my ears, because I found out the guy I was dating at the time had not told the truth to me. And so I said, I'm going to do 15 minutes of alternate nostril breathing. Actually, I said, I'm going to do 15 minutes of alternate nostril breathing. I put my watch down. I did 15 minutes of alternate nostril breathing. And I can tell you absolutely at the end of 15 minutes, which the right nostril is sympathetic, heats you. The left nostril is parasympathetic, cools you. And if you do alternate nostril breathing, it balances your right and left brain too, because your left brain is the worry brain and the right brain steps outside time and space. And so you get a sense of deep peace within about 5 minutes of doing alternate nostril breathing. It's so powerful. So I can truthfully say at the end of 15 minutes, I felt so peaceful. And I thought, it didn't make his actions right, the jerk. No, I'm teasing. Don't call people names. It doesn't work. Call everybody darling. The darling didn't make the right choice, but it didn't make his choice right. But I don't have to get diseased about it. I don't have to lose my ease about it. So I was in the airport traveling again with Swamiji in London. And he said, he made one more remark about the way I'd packed my luggage. And I got so mad. I walked away. For 20 minutes, I just looked at magazines. It was just the two of us traveling. I was serving as a secretary. It was like, I was so mad. And then I came back, and he'd put his feet up on his suitcase. And he was leaning back with his arms like this. And he had this huge grin on his face. And he said, so the surgeon must perform his surgery. Egodectomy. No anesthesia possible. That's it. For us to let go of our attachment to having things. Criticism is actually a really helpful tool. If we didn't have pain, we'd lose our fingertips because we wouldn't withdraw them from hot surfaces. We need feedback from each other, but it can be done in a loving way, and we can be free of our own pain. So I'll finish up with two poems. So my quick reference, if you're not feeling loving, give something. Giving things actually makes us feel so good. Prayer, gratitude, and color. It's interesting that Valentine's Day is red in the middle of winter. Red actually keeps you warmer. Red long underwear keeps you warmer. If athletes look at red for about 5 minutes before they compete, they're stronger. Football teams that have red on their uniforms win 10% more. And notice at the Super Bowl, the Patriots had red in their uniform. And also Tom Brady keeps a statue of Ganesh in his locker. So yellow is cheerful. If you're feeling you need boost, they call it the blues because blues quiets you down, and then you can't be as active. And we think about 600 thoughts a minute, between 300 and 1,000, and we can direct them toward healthy thoughts. So love is patient, love is kind. We know that from the Bible. But I particularly love this quote from Rumi, the mystical poet. He said, there are no edges to my loving now. And Hafez, another great poet, wrote a poem called With That Moon Language. Here's how it goes. Admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, love me. Of course, you do not do this out loud, otherwise someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with the full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other eye in the world is longing to hear? So let's be the love we want to see in the world and have Valentine's Day every minute. Thank you so much.